back. Today I'm going to show you how to make gold drips for cakes. Now half of the process you actually know already because I have a white chocolate drip YouTube video which you may have already seen, but I'm going to show you the next step to how to make them gold. Now I've just heated up some double cream here and I'm going to put in some white chocolate chips. And this is how I usually make my white chocolate ganache. And on my other video, if you want white chocolate drips, you need to add something called titanium dioxide, which is a white chocolate food colouring, because you will see what colour it naturally turns without the titanium dioxide. So I'm just mixing it all in until the chocolate has melted, and it is better using chocolate chips because they're smaller, they melt quicker. If you go in with a big bar of chocolate, it obviously takes longer to melt. So as you can see, it kind of has a yellow tone to it. Now you can put this directly on a cake and leave it, but it does look yellow, especially if you have white buttercream. And therefore, if you want it white, you add the colour. But because we're painting over them, I think it's a bit pointless colouring this white to then turn gold. So I actually leave it like this, and I'm going to put it into a piping bag. And like in my other video, I show two different ways of applying the drips, one with a palette knife like I usually do, or with a piping bag. And because I'm decorating quite a small cake, I want to control the drips slightly more, so I'm going to use the piping bag. I'm just going to secure the bag by just tying a knot at the end. Because white chocolate ganache is quite loose when it's warm, I like tying a knot so it doesn't spill out at the end of the piping bag. Now if you heated the cream slightly too much and it feels really warm, I would leave it on a cool surface beforehand. However, I've got my cake prepared here, so I've made a little dinky 4-inch cake, decorated like slightly semi-naked. And the most important thing about this is the cake has to be cold. Like really cold. This has been in the freezer for about 20 minutes, so when I touch it with the back of my finger, it's cold, so the white chocolate sets really quickly, basically. If it's not as cold, the white chocolate just runs and runs and runs due to the high fat content of the white chocolate. So I can feel it's not too warm, and obviously the cake is cold, so I'm going to go ahead with this. If you think the ganache is warm, then leave it for a bit. And if you don't think your cake is cold enough, then put it in the fridge or freezer for longer, because there's no going back, unfortunately. So I'm just going to cut a small opening at the end of the piping bag and start going on with the drips. Now I start slightly in because I'm going to allow the ganache to cool slightly before I tip it over the edge. And I don't squeeze too much because I know the white chocolate ganache travels quite a lot. And I'm applying different pressures so I get some long drips and some short drips too, just to make it look a bit more natural. And fill the top in. So take a quick look. Now if your drips are traveling really slowly, maybe you've made the ganache slightly too thick or the cake is extremely cold, don't worry too much because the white chocolate does take a while to set. So even though it looks like my drips have stopped dripping, I still think they're gonna travel longer. So now it's this point where I'm going to put it back in the fridge. If you put it in the freezer too soon, you run the risk of kind of underneath the drip hardening and then more white chocolate travels down and you get this kind of double drip effect. In fact, one of my drips is kind of doing that here. You can correct it, but it's easier to just put this in the fridge, let it set for about half an hour, and then transfer it to the freezer. So, like I said, I'm gonna put this in the fridge and then check it because we can't paint the gold on until the ganache is fully set. So my cake has had a good 20 minutes in the fridge and I tested it just by gently touching the top and it seemed quite set. So I've put it in the freezer. So you can do that. You just need to be aware of the timings and how it feels, etc. because everyone's ganache can be slightly different. I'm going to prepare the gold paint now. You don't want to do this too early because if you do it as you put the cake in the fridge, the liquid might evaporate, and then by the time you go to paint the drips, it's back into powder. So do it as late as possible. What you need is some edible lustre dust. Of course, make sure it's edible, which is basically a powder. These come in different shades, different colours, so it doesn't have to be gold. I'm just showing you the example because it's also the most popular requested from you guys. So yeah, it literally works with any lustre dust. And it's basically a combination of this powder and vodka or lemon juice. So the idea is that it's a liquid which easily evaporates. So you're basically left with the powder once you've painted it on. I'm using lemon juice because for various religious reasons, people don't drink alcohol or consume alcohol. So I like to keep it alcohol free if I can, but it does work extremely well with vodka. Again, all the alcohol dissolves, so you're not going to be getting drunk off the drips. So just empty some gold dust into a container. And there's no specific quantities. That might have been too much. I'm actually going to pour some back. It depends how much you're making. This is a really fun game. I'm going to control it a bit more. There we go. So I've got maybe a teaspoon's worth of powder. The best thing is that if you make too much, it does turn back into a powder, and then you can just reuse it as a dust or make it again. And then I'm just going to pour in a couple of drops of lemon juice and mix it in. And you can then see how thick or thin the paint is. So what happens is that the dust dissolves into the liquid. You mix it together and literally a paint forms. So I like to give it a good mix to make sure there are no lumps left. And I actually think that consistency is spot on. So it's not too thin that it's dropping off my paintbrush, but it's not too thick that it's like a big kind of thick, I don't even know what. It's quite obvious if it's too thick, basically. So what I'm going to do is leave that like that, go and get the cake, and then just try a bit. And it might be too thin, in which case I'll add a bit more powder, or vice versa. If it's too thick, I can add more lemon juice, but it's good to just try out a bit before you paint the whole cake. Okay, so my chocolate ganache has completely set, and you can just touch it, and it will always feel slightly sticky because white chocolate ganache does take a very long time to set, but as long as it's like hardened and it's definitely not dripping anymore and it's been in the fridge for a while, it's good to go. The only thing to obviously take care of is you don't want to brush it on and then it moves all the ganache. So I'm just going to test the consistency of the paint by just brushing on top. And I can actually see quite a few brush strokes, so I am going to put slightly more gold dust in because I think it's a little bit too thin. That's looking a lot better. So like I said, it's good to practice first, and also what I forgot to mention is that I am using food safe brushes, not any old paintbrush, because the bristles can come off really easily. So if you don't have them already, it's a good investment. And it's basically a case of really carefully painting on the drips. So the smaller paintbrushes work better. And you want a bit of a steady hand for this. And what I always have at hand is a clean brush, and I've got quite a nice flat brush here, and I use that to clean either side of a drip to get rid of any little bits of gold that's on the cake. Don't worry about the buttercream because it's been in the fridge and freezer for so long, it's pretty set, so it shouldn't affect it too much. So I'm going to continue painting until all the drips are painted. And once I've done all the drips around the edge, I do like to go over the top. But if you're doing a big cake, and especially a tiered cake, there's no point of filling all the top if you're going to cover it with decorations. So just bear that in mind. So for example, if I was doing the whole top with decorations, I'd probably only go over with like an inch, half an inch border of gold, because it's obviously a lot of gold wasted, etc. But I'm only going to do a few decorations on top. So I'm going to go over the whole top with some more gold. So like I said, you might need to add little bits of lemon juice or vodka if you're using along the way, if you're doing more drips, because it dries out. But once you're done, you can decorate. So I've actually got a few leftover decorations that I was doing for a larger cake. No rule with the decoration, you could do anything you like. Got a few meringue kisses here. And then a couple of dried oranges, which I actually like using the halves of, especially on smaller cakes. And some chocolate ruffles. And you can see I'm not actually applying any more buttercream to stick them with. You can, obviously, but the ganache is still sticky, so I'm using that as a glue. I'm just going to dust some of the chocolate again. So as you can see, it's the same dust that we used to create the drips. So it's really versatile. And there we go, little cute gold cake. The paint will eventually dry, so leave it out for about 10 minutes and then I would actually keep this in the fridge, especially because the white chocolate takes a while to completely set. I actually now keep all my cakes in the fridge until a couple of hours before they are eaten or given to the client. So try it out yourself. Remember, you don't have to do gold, you can do any colour as long as it comes in a lustre dust. I've even mixed like reds and golds to get a rose gold colour and done copper ones as well. So you could get really creative with it. If you try it out, please tag me at George's Cakes. I'd love to see them. Any suggestions for any more YouTube videos, please write in the comments below, because essentially these are all for you. So I just want to hear what you want to see. I hope you enjoyed it and I will see you next time.